God, I wish that were me. No thoughts, just homosexual. How come I never experienced tenderness in the laundromat? How come that's not for me? All I have to say about this film is the love scene owes me child support. If I could get pregnant from other women, I would be in a lot of trouble. The love scene in this film belongs in a museum in Paris, where it will increase the lesbian population tenfold. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video I'm just going to be reviewing the 1995 film When Night is Falling. She's so strange, why was she made? Nobody knows, but we're grateful anyway. As a heads up, this video will contain spoilers, so if you have not seen this film, you have been warned. So if you're not familiar with When Night is Falling, it follows Camille, a mythology professor at a conservative Christian college, who finds herself strangely attracted to a free-spirited liberal woman who works at a local carnival that comes to town. Ah yes, fine Christian woman seduced by carefree lesbian. Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme. So, let's get into it. First of all, When Night is Falling is a very visually compelling production from beginning to end. It's not afraid to take risks and be artistically experimental, which I think ultimately goes in its favour and makes it an aesthetically unique and particularly memorable piece of lesbian cinema. The fact that this film explores a romance between a fine Christian woman, as Camille is described in the film, who works at a conservative college, and a carefree performer who works as part of a travelling circus allows for a juxtaposition not only between two very different characters, but between the two very different environments those characters inhabit. And it's fascinating to see those two divergent social spheres contrasted and interrelated on screen. There's also a really rich offering of symbolism and metaphors in When Night is Falling, some of which contains an element of surrealism due to the carnival elements in this film, making it an exceptionally interesting visual production to deconstruct. Patricia Rozema has taken care to implement thoughtful visual clues and imagery which relate to Camille and Petra's relationship throughout the film, and which keeps them connected even when they're not physically together. And the fact that the artistic tapestry in this film is threaded with so much meaning is one of its most intriguing aspects. In fact, you can tell that Patricia Rozema constructed certain parts of Camille and Petra's relationship and certain parts of the narrative around visual symbolism and metaphors. So there's really no such thing as too much theorizing when it comes to this film. For the most part, the implementation of symbolism and metaphors in this film is intelligent, and it works to enhance the narrative and characterization of Camille and Petra. But I did feel in some places it was slightly overly ambitious. For example, Bob the dog is used as a metaphor for Camille's sexuality throughout the entire film, and I feel like if you don't understand that, which I certainly didn't my first time watching this film, then a lot of Camille's behaviour around Bob and Bob's presence in this film in general come across as confusing and absurd. You know, Bob mysteriously dies when the subject of marriage comes up between Camille and Martin, and instead of burying Bob, Camille stores him in the fridge, and this represents her compartmentalizing her sexuality because she's not ready to deal with it yet. We then don't see Bob's body again until Martin discovers Camille's affair with Petra, and he places Bob out in the open between the both of them, which of course represents the unspoken elephant in the room, which is Camille's sexuality being laid out on the table. And the conversation between Martin and Camille in this scene prompts Camille to finally bury Bob for Martin's sake. And by doing so, she is of course burying her truth, her sexuality, and her chance at being truly happy, which we can see is so emotionally traumatic for her, it almost costs her her life. Then when Camille is rescued and reunited with Petra, Bob magically comes back to life and starts running around, which is supposed to represent how Camille is now finally free to be who she truly is and start the beginning of her new life with Petra. But as I said, if you don't understand that Bob is a metaphor and not an actual dog, A lot of Camille's behaviour around Bob and Bob's scenes in general seem absurd. So I don't think the dog was the best vessel for a metaphor about sexuality, and it was forced in the film at the expense of coherency. But nonetheless, it's still an interesting layer of this production to deconstruct. Of course, without a doubt, the strongest aspect of When Night is Falling is the profound connection and palpable chemistry between Rachel Crawford and Pascal Bussière, which makes all of their scenes together so affecting and captivating. And this connection of theirs is essentially what carries the film, especially in places where the writing around their characters' behaviour would otherwise be perceived as ridiculous or questionable. For example, I think a lot of Petra's actions in this film could be considered stalking and could be considered overstepping boundaries, but due to the fact that Rachel Crawford brings so much emotional depth to the role and elicits such a perceptible connection with Pascal, Petra's actions are somewhat assuaged by those two factors. I mean, as much as I like this film, I can't pretend that the writing in it isn't questionable in places, because it is. For example, Petra turns up at Camille's house uninvited and shoots her number through Camille's open window. And then when Camille lets her in, they suddenly start kissing, and then Camille runs away out of her own house. The next thing is Petra is hanging around outside Camille's work, again uninvited, and she's watching her through a window. That is the sequence of events. And again, if there wasn't such an intense chemistry between Rachel and Pascal, that whole sequence of events at best would have come across as awkward and at worst completely terrifying. There is a meta conversation that takes place when Camille first visits Petra's trailer, where Petra says that some things may be uncalled for, but if you wait for what's called for, usually nothing happens. Which serves as somewhat of an explanation to Petra's forwardness and her behaviour with Camille in this film. And whilst that concept does have some truth to it, I don't know how well it can be applied to a romantic pursuit. Because I think there's a line between forwardness and overstepping boundaries, especially when you're dealing with someone who's still processing their sexuality. And it's a line that the film definitely skates along in places. I think the massage scene is a prime example of this line skating, because you can tell that Petra is testing Camille's physical boundaries, and you're not really sure how comfortable Camille is with what's happening at first. But due to the chemistry between the two actors, the tone of the scene ends up leaning more towards sensual rather than purely uncomfortable. And again, without that chemistry between the two actors, that scene would have read as very different, in my opinion. I mean, this whole film is just a showcase of both Pascal Bussière and Rachel Crawford's talent as actors. Like I said, they just bring so much depth and emotional nuance to their characters in this film, and all of their scenes are just completely captivating. Rachel in particular is a standout in this film, and one of my favourite scenes in the film is when she's being comforted by Timothy, and Timothy asks her if she's serious about Camille, and Rachel's expressions just convey so much in response to that question without her having to say a single word. Her performance in this film is just truly impressive and acts as damage control to some of the writing in this film, so a good casting choice, I should say. Speaking of truly impressive, I do have to commend Patricia Rozema on creating one of the greatest lesbian love scenes in the history of lesbian cinema. That is quite the achievement. And the love scene is really what this film is most known for. What's also noteworthy about Patricia Rozema's direction in this film is the way she frames nudity and the female body on screen. There's quite a bit of nudity in this film, but never at any point does it feel gratuitous or salacious. In fact, I think this film is one of the few lesbian films where the nudity actually works to enhance the love scene instead of cheapening it, which is a testament to Patricia Rozema's talent and her artistic vision. I think what makes the love scene in When Night is Falling so powerful and unique is the amount of care taken with the direction and cinematography, which frames it as a raw portrayal of intimacy through the female gaze. And it's a scene which sits in stark contrast to the way both the female body and female sexuality is often portrayed on screen. I mean, I could have done without the equally as explicit hetero love scene. I do understand that that scene contained a lot of meaning and it was really about Camille's sexual awakening through Petra. I understand that, but I didn't need to see it. I'm a good Christian woman. Love scene aside, this film is also pretty unique in the way that it's a production of the mid-90s which gives its lesbian couple a happy ending. And not only that, it also doesn't put its lesbian characters through any kind of excessive trauma, which is particularly impressive considering the religious elements in this film as well. So in terms of 90s lesbian cinema, this film is somewhat of a rare shiny Pokemon card. Overall, When Night is Falling is a visually interesting roller coaster from beginning to end. And it's not only a distinct piece of lesbian cinema, but it's a distinct piece of cinema in general. I really think the fact that this film is just so unapologetically artistically experimental, alongside the palpable connection and chemistry between Rachel and Pascal, and the care taken with the direction in their more intimate scenes, are what makes this film so unforgettable. Okay guys, if you've seen When Night is Falling, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!